So today we're going to try out a new content series here that I'm really excited about, where we sit down with one of the founders of a popular pro audio company and basically get the inside scoop on how one of their products came into existence. Specifically, Soyuz Microphones and their 013 series small diaphragm condensers. We're going to talk to one of the co-founders of Soyuz, learn about some of these crazy parts that have ended up inside of these mics, why they chose them, and how those components have given them such a unique sound. A little bit about the 013 first. I kind of noticed through the course of my work, which I will give you some background on in a second, that the 013s have kind of silently become the new industry standard small diaphragm condenser mic. I think it's them and Sheps that are really kind of like the top of the top right now in terms of currently produced small diaphragm condensers. I think they're about the only mic that you could put up against a vintage Neumann KM84 right now on overheads, on acoustics, a bunch of different sources. And they're being used by a lot of top-level engineers right now. If you watch the NPR Tiny Desk Concerts, you'll usually see one of these up there. Garth Richardson, Butch Walker, Sylvia Massy all swear by these things. And there are a few, like I said, components in them, a few things about the way that they're made that give them such a unique character and sound. We're going to kind of break down what those things are. So a little disclaimer before we start. For most of 2023, I was actually running Soyuz's marketing department through my company, Mixbus Marketing. So I might be a little bit biased, but our contract ended a few months ago. They're not paying me to do this. I didn't get any mics for free, anything like that. I just really saw these things kind of dominating this specific niche. And like I said, that they've kind of become this new industry standard. And some of the story about how they came to be was fascinating to me. And I didn't know all of it until I sat down to do this video. And I thought people would find it really interesting. So I wanted to sit down and talk about it. So my company, Mixbus Marketing, is basically a marketing and creative agency specifically for audio brands. I work with companies like PMC Speakers, Triad Orbit Stand Systems, Mojave Audio, Sweetwater, Westlake Pro, Antelope Audio, and a bunch more. And through the course of my work, I've been lucky enough to meet some amazing people and hear the stories behind some of my favorite gear. So the idea behind this series is to draw back the curtain and share some of these nerdy details with you. You might say I'm shilling gear, and you're probably right. I don't really care. I just think these are super cool stories, and I love geeking out on audio stuff, so I wanted to share them with people who I hope are like-minded. Definitely let me know what you think in the comments. I kept the interview portion of this fairly short and to the point this time, but if there's interest, we can make these more conversational and turn it into like a podcasty thing, something like that. So anyway, today we're going to sit down with Pavel Bazdyrev, or Pasha to his friends, who's one of the co-founders of Soyuz Microphones. Now, if you haven't heard the story behind Soyuz and how the company got started, it's truly incredible in its own right, and you should check out the story I wrote for them over the summer, which I will link down in the description. It's actually super similar to the story behind Tetris in an odd way. But anyway, the gist is that it was founded by an American, David Brown, and a Russian guy, Pasha, who met when David's band was touring through Russia. Pasha was working at the time at the Mars Candy Company, sourcing all of their hazelnuts worldwide, which gave him some interesting skills in procuring rare items, which, as you'll hear in a moment, kind of came in handy later on as Soyuz got up and running. Anyway, without further ado, here are 3 reasons why the Soyuz 013 series are some of the best small diaphragm condensers ever made, and why they were made that way. Number 1, the diaphragm. So these mics actually have a pretty big diaphragm. Most small diaphragm condensers, take the Neumann KM84 I talked about earlier, for example, have around a 20 millimeter capsule, somewhere around there. These mics have a 25 millimeter capsule, which for all my American friends is like 3/16 of an inch, just a shade under a 1/4 inch larger in Freedom units. So it gives them a really deep, full sound that picks up a little more detail on the low end, but still has that fast frequency response that most small diaphragm condensers have. So I'm gonna play you an example I recorded with my friend Tudor in his studio a few days ago. Take a listen to this pair of 013 tubes on his upright piano and see what you think. So I was curious, was this a happy accident? Was it intentional? Let's hear what Pasha has to say.
When it comes to small diaphragm condensers, most of the mics have the diaphragm within 20 millimeters. And we were and it's another thing that we kind of felt the small diaphragm mics were missing is the low end. They're good, they're accurate, they have very fast transit response because of the small diaphragm, but at the same time we couldn't find a model that would have like the right bottom for us. And that's why we decided to go a little wider. So the larger the diaphragm, the better is the low end response. So when we were finding the right balance between like making it like better low end, and at the same time to keep it like in the ballpark of the small diaphragm mics, being as fast and responsive. So we felt that 25 millimeters was exactly the right sweet spot.
Number 2, the Handmade Capsule. So I don't need Pasha to weigh in on this one. There's tons of information online about the manufacturing process at Soyuz, including this full documentary that Production Expert did, which I will link in the description. But yeah, these things are 100% handmade in-house, just like your grandpa's furniture. The paint, the wooden boxes, the transformers are wound in-house. Even the capsules are milled to within like 1 micron of tolerance from solid brass bar stock. These days, handmade capsules are fairly rare, and I think one of the reasons that engineers love vintage microphones, whether they know this or not, is because the way they were made does impart some specific characteristics. Notably, mass-produced capsules tend to have that like tinny, almost too bright high end that's especially prominent in cheap condensers. A handmade capsule is still plenty bright, but you'll find the top end is a lot smoother in comparison. This is a big part of the quote Soyuz sound. In some of their mics, it's like really noticeable. For example, in the Outtro 3, a lot of people think that mic sounds almost like it's a blend between a condenser and a ribbon microphone because the top end is even almost rolled off just a touch. And that's one of the reasons that I absolutely love the O13s as acoustic guitar mics. Take a listen to this example with Tutor. Number 3, the tubes. This one is specific to the O13 tube, obviously, but we'll touch on the FET as well in a sec. Anyway, this thing has a tiny little Soviet-era radio tube inside of it. And when I say Soviet, I mean it's literally army surplus from the Soviet era. And there are not that many of these things out there, which I actually did not know until I did this video and talked to Pasha about it. You can tell by my reaction in this interview. So I will let Pasha explain why they chose this tube and how difficult it was to actually get a decent supply of them.
Yeah, okay. That was actually a very easy choice because we are big fans of Soviet schematics, of everything Soviet actually, like acoustical technologies and schematics. And for 13 tubes, we actually used, as a base, we used Loma schematics, schematics of Loma tube mics. And that was easy because they actually feature this 6S6B tube. It's a sub-mini tube that worked like super good and gave this signature sound to Loma microphones. And that was actually a very easy choice. So, okay, we're going to base the schematics based on old Loma, and we're going to use the old Loma tube. But at the same time, it's a quite rare tube. If you go like 6G1P, like the one we use in the tube mic, it's much easier to find because those initially those tubes were used in Soviet TV like old tube TVs, and I even like found some old ones with my grandma like supplies. That is interesting. So there's a lot of them. Now they're not as common, but you can still find them. Like you can go to some classifieds and maybe like 5-10 tubes at a time, you can still get them. With sub-mini tubes, it's much more, how to say it? It's more precious item.
Rare.
It was not used. It's much rare. It's very rare item. So it was used in some radio stations, of very selected models that were not commonly used, and it was really hard to find them. So when I was on the market hunting for those tubes, at first I couldn't find them anywhere. Like it's like nobody sells those. Like, okay, maybe we should just change the schematics. Maybe we'll need something else. But then apparently I found one ad, like where there was one guy saying, okay, I found like a big surplus, a big supply, 2 crates of those tubes. It's like 2,000 tubes. It's like, okay, what's the price? He gave me the price. I'm not gonna tell it. It was a pretty good price. Like, okay, I'll buy them all. So like, you sure? It's like, yes, I'm buying 2,000 tubes.
Yeah.
And that's how I got them, and they still last. And I envision your next question. How do we make sure we never run out of those?
Yeah, exactly.
We may run out, and that's going to be gone. And then 13 tubes will become a history.
Wow.
So
you only have 2,000 of them total?
Yes.
That's
and I
fewer
can tell
than I
you,
thought.
Yeah. And I can tell you, like, we have less than a half left.
Wow.
Far less than a half.
All right, I need to bump that up on my list of things to buy.
Yeah, maybe we'll find something, but so far, like once a month, we scan the market in case if somebody's selling, we couldn't find them.
Wow.
Once I was lucky to get like 10 of them, and with tube mics, you need to, like, in order to make a pair of 13 tubes, you need to have at least like 4 or 5 tubes because they're new old stock. They're like from 70s, 80s. So you need to, and then you need to select a pair that will have the same characteristics. That's another challenge.
Wow.
So
2,000 isn't actually 2,000. It's fewer than that.
Yeah, it's actually 1,500.
Wow.
And when you start matching those, it's even less.
Wow.
So there's not that much 13 tubes left.
Okay. All right. I'm going to have to prioritize that. I'm going to tell that to my buddy. For part of this video, we did some sound samples, and I went to my buddy's studio a couple nights ago, and we set it. He has this really nice upright piano, and we set him up on there, and he like played one chord, and then he just like looked up and was like,
"You sound amazing."
"It sounds so good, dude."
It's crazy.
So there you have it. You better get your O13 tubes now, because these things are going to be like a first edition Charizard in a few years. I said I'd mention the O13 FETs as well. They also have a really cool little component in them, and that is the custom hand-wound transformer. The O13 tube also has a transformer in it as well, and the relationship between tube and transformer is a lot of what makes the sound of any audio gear, but just having that transformer alone is where a lot of tone comes from. One of the reasons that people love those vintage Neumann KM84s is the transformers in them, which impart a touch of musical distortion, if you will. So these mics are not ultra clean like an Earthworks small diaphragm condenser. They're not super pristine or sterile. The transformers especially, but that with the other points that I talked about, give these mics a really musical tone that just sounds awesome. If you want to hear these mics for yourself, Soyuz has a really great demo program with Sweetwater, Vintage King, all the resellers, where they can actually send you a demo to try in your own studio, and if you like it, you can buy it. If you don't like it, you can send it back. Most people never do. So definitely take advantage of that if you're interested. If you think I'm a shill and these mics suck, feel free to roast me in the comments. I can take it. If you agree, feel free to roast the haters. Thank you for having my back. And if you want more content like this, where I sit down with founders, product designers, engineers, artists, etc., hit the subscribe button, please, and let me know. And until then, I will catch you in the next one.